Hello everybody, it's ArteDar. Today is Sunday 23rd, day 23 of the 31-day challenge for Marion Smith. I made another little captured fairy in a jar. The one that I did last night on Ustream, it went really fast and everything was just messed up all over my desk. I don't know how you girls do the Ustream and you do it so successfully and it looks effortless, when in fact when I do it, it seems like chaos, like I've rushed through it. So I really wanted to take my time and do one nice and slow today and go back over again for those that want to make it. This is mulberry papers and tissue papers and different things that are Mod Podged on, and then a dry brush of the white paint, and then I did gold rub and buff. And then this is hot glued on trims, hot glued on with Stickles Prima flowers, your ribbons and laces and stuff that go on the side. And this is just clip art. This little girl came from Art Check Studio, and those are feathers, the monarch feather butterfly wings. And you can barely see, but it's there. See the vines and the sticks that are behind her? That's the secret of putting these jars together. I don't know how they do the ship in the bottle, but if you take your vines, let's see if it'll focus, the vines like this or twigs from your trees, and get it the length and try to get the straight ones, because I had a real hard time with the one last night. The vines weren't straight enough, and you glue your little fairy to the vines and then poke her down in the jar. You might have to curl the wings in a little bit to get past the narrow opening, but that's the trick of getting these down in there, is making sure that you use a nice firm twig. Okay, Laurel from New Jersey, she made me a featured artist a few days ago and I was thrilled. I mean, I just had no idea that she was going to do that, and thank you again, Laurel, so much. And she mentioned that I have a lot of different mediums that I do, and I do. I alter objects, found objects, and make them into something else, either decorative or whatever. I sculpt clay, I cut wood, I paint, I draw, I build. And she says, I bet she sews too. So tonight I just want to show you a few of the things that I have sewn. I could say my very first love was Mommy giving us the crayons and the coloring books, and I'll always go back to paper and crayons, but my very, very first true love is sewing. When I was a little girl, she bought a treadle sewing machine from her father, and I sat and I sewed on that treadle sewing machine for hours, making doll clothes, making little dolls and things, and that's my passion, was always to sew. This one is muslin. The muslin is my own pattern. She's called Bless You. There's her tag, says Bless You, and she has the little lamb with the heart on it, says thank you, and she's looking up to heaven, and she's very folk art looking. You can see it's kind of puckered and everything. It's not perfect. It's not supposed to be. But there she goes, muslin painted. You can paint gesso first to get a nice stiff one, or you can go right to your acrylics. I use the cheapo acrylic paints, paint it on. And the funny story about this, when they say you have serendipity, well, last night when I was doing the Ustream, my vision, I did not read the can very well, and I sprayed adhesive instead of a fixative. This was the same scenario. I had made these girls, I stuffed them, I painted them, and I'm just getting ready to spray the varnish on them so that I could put the antiquing gel, and I used a spray adhesive. Oh my God, I wanted to cry. I said, oh, I just ruined all those dolls, and there was probably a dozen of them. But as it turns out, when the glue dried and I did put my gel medium on it, it was just more grungy than I could have ever expected. So that was a real fun serendipity. The fun thing about when you get in a swap with different girls, they'll pick a theme and you can go in and swap with them. Well, the Raggedy Ann and Andy, and the story about Raggedy Ann, it was so endearing to me. I learned about how the father had brought down an old doll and fixed it up for her daughter, gave it button eyes, and this one's, if you know anything about Raggedy Ann and Andy, this is Belinda, her friend. She had the camel with the wrinkly knees. So this is just a transfer, iron-on transfer onto muslin, and then I used the old what makes this look old is if you take coffee stain and stain it all up with coffees and teas and things like that. So that was fun to join a swap and learn the history. Just right in it real quick to find out the history about everything. So these can be little ornaments that, yeah, they have no feet on them specifically so that they could fit down inside the camel and take the ride. She was made in 2005. So that's my little Raggedy Ann. And Andy, well, sorry, not Andy, Belinda, her girlfriend. I made these. I made a lot of these. They're just little puff pillows, and you stitch, hand stitch with the embossing embroidery. Mom and I used to sit and embroider for hours on pillowcases and things like that. So back then it was called embroidery. Today it's just called stitching because they do it very primitive. Here's a, we call them a make-do. This is all wool, hearts to God, hands to work, and it's wool with buttons. This was also made in 205, and it's a candle stick, and I filled it with the old buttons and then wrapped it around, sewed it on, and I'm still using my hot glue for a lot of things. If I can use the hot glue, I go for it. So that's a pin cushion, and it's called a make-do because you would take your scraps. This is kind of like a red velvety material, and then I stitched it like a strawberry, and it's stuffed with steel wool. If you stuff it with steel wool, you can clean your needles and make your needles nice and sharp. It sharpens and cleans your needles and pins. So that's a little tip if you want to make a real nice pin cushion. But the steel wool is really hard to stuff. You can get stuck with steel wool real easy. I don't like getting stuck with it. I have an affection for lamb and sheep, and these are more kind of like a make-do. If you wanted to stick it with pins and stuff, you could, but no, it's just on a little wooden bob that you can get at the thrift stores or home gardening centers. There's a couple more of the lamb, sheep. He has the real old steel square peg nails, antique looking. This one has a bigger toy eye. We used to buy these to make our teddy bears and stuff with. I have some that even look more human-like. They're not the solid black. They actually have the iris and the color browns and blues. And this is just wool woven wrapped around the body. Some twigs for the feet. Here's a swan. I had made several of the swans, and a lot of them were either sold or gifted to other people. This is also wool. It's not 100% because it did have like a polyester lining on it. And then you can just take your acrylic paint and paint your different things on. That's her nose. That's the lamb. Oh, and of course, the lamb, I'm saying lamb, this is the black sheep of the family. Of course, we have to have them. Some families have them, some don't. I don't know. My husband's brown, being Filipino, so I like to find brown when I can. This is a pattern. I very seldom ever buy patterns, but I really was just so curious as to how they got this three-dimensional self-sculpted face. And the designer is Dirty Crow's Inn. Crowzinn. And she did fabulous patterns. And the simplicity of it was it's in 3 layers. You would take your first 2 layers and stitch your nose, stitch your face, and then you're going to stuff them. And we used a lot of different kinds of little tools for stuffing that small of an area. And the eyebrows. After you would stuff that, then you would take your 3rd piece, and that would be the back, and you would sew it together inside out, turn it right side in, and stuff it, and you'd have your face already sculpted. Then you paint it with your acrylic paints, and I take the sandpaper and sanded it all off. This is real hair from the goat, or the lamb, or the sheep. I think this was sheep roving. And then again, muslin, the moon, and she's attached. She was made in 2005. She's attached to these boxes that you get at Michael's, and it was lined with the ticking and, of course, tea stained, coffee stained, and all that good stuff to make it real old and primitive. And her name on this pattern, and I don't even know if the girl's still in business or not, but this one was called Odessa's Dreams. See if it's not on there, but yeah, this is Odessa's Dreams. So after learning how to do this, I ripped her off. I did, but it wasn't something I ripped off that I was going out and trying to sell and put my own name to it. But there she is, a nice little mammy girl with all this fun wool, black wool with the brown and the little blonde tips. And I did the 3 nose and painted her, and she has a little key, and she has her pet crow and a little basket, and look at the hands. They're just all sculpted, and I love the feet. She has her bloomers on, and there's her little fat feet, you know. You sew them and turn them, and they have some really interesting tools in order to, let me see, I'm looking for the jar up there on my sewing shelf. See if I can quick find one of the tools that makes it really easy to do your turning on these really small areas. Hold on one second, girls, because you might be interested in doing that yourself. Let me see. Should be right here. Yep, there it is. I'm reaching. Do you hear that? Yay! That's the tools for turning. A lot of us like to use the forceps that you get, you know, in the medical career, the medical industry. They have these. You can buy these in different stores. But this is the tool, let me tell you, girls, that will save you a lot of aggravation when it comes to turning the real teeny tiny little parts of dolls. What they gave us was different plastic tubes, all different sizes for different areas that you want to turn, and it has a wooden dowel with a rounded end, so you would put your item in there and you would just stuff it and it would turn it inside out. And even this little red one's for the teeniest tiniest little fingers and things to turn. I've made some dolls that have the tiniest little fingers that have been turned, and that tool was a lifesaver. So there you go, girls. I wanted to show you that ArteDar does love to sew. I still have that antique treadle sewing machine, and I still pick up and sew a little bit now and then. You never know when you need to make curtains for your kitchen or make up something just for the fun of it. So there you go. ArteDar can sew. Thank you. Take care.